I came across this article for Vox and I'm going to share it with y'all. But I do want to share with y'all why I just simply read these stories when I know that most of y'all probably have the capacity to read yourself. It's because I would be watching videos or listening to YouTube or whatever, and creators would say, stop and read this, pause to read. And if I'm washing dishes or folding laundry, I don't want to stop what I'm doing and read something. So that is the reason why I got into the habit of reading whole articles for people. If you are not one that likes that, you can stop right here and go find this on Vox. I'm just sharing why I do that. Anyways, this goes perfectly with my birth rate decline stories. You can't even pay people to have more kids. These countries try everything from cash to patriotic calls to duty to reverse drastically declining birth rates. It didn't work. Let's get into it. Taiwan has spent more than $3 billion trying to get citizens to have more children. In 2009, after decades of falling birth rates, it began offering 6 months of paid paternal leave, reimbursed at 60% of a new parent's salary. Then it recently increased that share to 80%. The government has introduced a cash benefit and a tax break for parents of young children and has invested in childcare centers. Perhaps having exhausted more conventional approaches, current and would-be lawmakers have started getting creative. Authorities have hosted several singles mixers in an effort to get young people to pair up. Terry Gao, a candidate in next year's Taiwanese presidential election, has even proposed giving people a free pet if they have a child. If there is no birth rate in the future, who will take care of our furry friends? So if you have a kid, which is a lot of work, a lot of sleep deprivation, and a high cost, here's a free puppy. Why? And that didn't work? Strange. If history is any guide, none of this will work. No matter what governments do to convince them to procreate, people around the world are having fewer and fewer kids. In the US, the birth rate has been falling since the Great Recession, dropping almost 23% between 2007 and 2022. Today, the average American woman has about 1.6 children, down from 3 in 1950, and significantly below the replacement rate of 2.1 children needed to sustain a stable population. In Italy, 12 people now die for every 7 babies born. In South Korea, the birth rate is down to 0.81 children per woman. In China, after decades of a strictly enforced one-child policy, the population is shrinking for the first time since the 1960s. In Taiwan, the birth rate stands at 0.87. The drop has frightened lawmakers and commentators alike, with headlines warning of a coming demographic crisis or great people shortage as economies find themselves without enough young workers to fill jobs and pay taxes. So, putting a dollar sign on women's wombs. To stem the tide, the world leaders have tried everything from generous social welfare programs to pink and blue awareness campaigns to five-figure checks, 5 figures, to veil threats, all to relatively little avail. Even the richest, savviest, most committed governments have struggled to find policies that produce sustained bumps in fertility. Trent McNamara, a history professor at Texas A&M who has written about fertility rates, told Vox in an email, "If such policies were discoverable, I think someone would have discovered them." The failure of dozens of often very expensive pronatalist policies to produce much of a return has policymakers and observers alike wondering whether there's any way to for governments to convince their citizens to have more babies. If not, what should lawmakers be doing instead to help societies adapt to a demographically changing world? How politicians have tried to convince people to have babies? In many ways, the falling birth rate is a success story, the result of young people, especially women, having more options and freedoms than ever before. Basically, women and teenage girls didn't want to have 10 babies. They didn't. So as soon as opportunities found them, then they took them and seized on them. For example, women are better able to control their fertility than in decades past. The Dobbs decision and subsequent change in state bans on abortion may change that calculus in the U.S. But prior to the fall of Roe, teen births and unintended births were on the decline, and the use of highly effective contraception methods was on the rise. Recently, however, Declining fertility has stoked anxieties around the world as leaders face down the prospect of slowing growth and aging populations. Fewer births do have real consequences for how families and societies operate. In 2010, for example, there were more than 7 family members available to care for each person over the age of 80. By 2030, there will only be 4. An aging society also means fewer workers in key industries and fewer people paying into programs like Social Security. So they need more wage slaves, and women are opting out of producing more wage slaves. So, how do we make the women produce more wage slaves? These prospects tend to elicit panic among conservatives who take a moralistic and sometimes xenophobic tone in addressing the issue. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio has warned of the dangers of the childless left and its rejection of the American family. In China, male community party officials at a recent meeting on women's issues bypassed any talk of gender equality and instead urged women to establish a correct outlook on marriage and love, childbirth, and family. In Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban has exhorted citizens to reproduce rather than allowing the country's population to grow through immigration, saying, "Migration for us is surrender." But concerns about birth rates go beyond the rhetoric of right wing politicians. Governments like Taiwan have spent billions of dollars and tried all manner of incentives to cajole, even bribe people into having more babies. Many European countries that experienced plummeting fertility rates in the 80s and 90s have adopted pro family policies, often including paid paternal leave, publicly supported childcare, or a combination thereof, said Philip Cohen, a sociology professor at the University of Maryland, who studies demographic trends and family structure. Austria, for example, lengthened maternity leave to 2.5 years. Germany increased investment in childcare and early education, and then in 2013 affirmed that every child over the age of 1 had a right to a spot in public daycare. This part was funny. This made me laugh this summer. Other countries have tried direct payments to parents. Russia began offering a one-time sum of about $7,000 to families with more than 2 kids, while Italy and Greece have experimented with per-child baby bonuses. In 2019, Hungary introduced a loan of around $30,000 to newlyweds. If they have 3 children, the loan is forgiven. Still 10,000 per kid. Public education campaigns have also emerged, essentially begging people to reproduce. In Copenhagen, for example, a 2015 poster asked, "Have you counted your eggs today?" In 2012, Singaporean government partnered with Mentos to release a rap video encouraging couples to make Singapore's birth rate spike. Only financially secure adults in stable, committed long-term relationships should participate, the campaign clarified. So far, most countries have tried either asking people nicely to reproduce or sweetening the deal with money. If that doesn't work, however, restricting people's reproductive choices may be on the table, as in The Handmaid's Tale, especially in more autocratic regimes. In Iran, where the government in the 1990s made birth control cheap or free in an effort to curb population growth, authorities are now cracking down on abortion and contraception as part of the drive to boost births. In the US, abortion bans have not generally been explicitly promoted as population boosting measures, but some see them that way. New House Speaker Mike Johnson has linked falling birth rates and demographic change with abortion, arguing that Roe v. Wade was responsible for a dearth of American workers. We're all struggling here to cover the bases of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the rest. If we had all those able-bodied workers in the economy, we wouldn't be going upside down and toppling like this. At no point in time have I seen any of these leaders, which are typically male leaders, go to women and say, "What is it that y'all need?" What they keep doing is implementing what they believe will work. It's not working because not enough women are involved with the process. And y'all, they need to convince the women to have these babies because it's our body that changes, it's our health at risk, and we're the ones that end up carrying the bag, doing all of the work, and being responsible for a majority of the child rearing. Y'all jump in the comments. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, share.